to the good old days. Let me take you back to the good old days. Let me take you back to the good old days. Oh, yeah. Let me take you back to the good old days. Let me take you back to the good old days. Let me take you back to the good old days. Let me take you back to the good old days. Let me take you back to the good old days.
Talofa lava maloli soifua maua ma Leilani e mama. Ni sambolavinaka ke muni saka na wikanda mai viti. Hello everyone and welcome to Talanoa with Tupe. This is a show where we celebrate and highlight Pasifika success in all its many forms. Each week we sit down with a different Pacific thought leader to hear about their journey and learn from their experience. Our guest today is Wellington author and educator Dahlia Malaeulu. Dalia is the author of Mila's My Gagana series and young adult fiction book Teine Samoa. I'm really looking forward to our Talanoa today. Like many children of the migration, I can relate to Dalia's experience of walking two worlds and her search to find her identity. Before we sit down with our guest, let's see how we go with our Blue Pacific quiz. How well do you know our region? Let's find out.
Kia ora.
Talofa lava.
My name is Tuasivi.
And my name is Telesia.
And we are members of
the Pacific Social Justice League. And we're going to give you a quiz on our Blue Pacific.
Let's go.
Can you tell us which country this flag belongs to?
Can you tell us the capital of this country?
Can you tell us the name of the leader of this country?
And lastly, can you tell us what currency they use in this country?
Stick around to the end of the show so we can compare our answers.
See you soon.
Thank you to Telesia and Tuasivi. Up next, it's our segment on Pacific literature presented by Leilani Tamu.
Talofa lava malolele whakalofa lahi atu. My name's Leilani Tamu. I'm an editor and a writer, and I'm passionate about Pacific books. The book I'm going to speak to you about today is called New Voices, Contemporary Pacific Fiction. It's an anthology that was published in 2006 and it's edited by Dr. Selena Tusitalamash. I feel really honoured to review this book because it's actually the book that launched my writing career as a poet. When I submitted my poems to be included in this book, I never thought that they would be even worthy of consideration. So when they were accepted, it really, I think for me, instilled confidence in my own ability as a writer. And I think for me, that's really what this book is about. There are over 20 different writers in here, and there are poems and short stories. And for me, it's important that we have books like this because they act as a vessel for many of us as writers to come together as Pasifika and to share stories, and also for us to be validated in terms of our work being published, because it is so hard to be published in this region. So really, all I can say about this book is it's a must-have if you love Pacific literature. So do get your copy. If you'd be interested in more of my work and my reviews, or you'd even like to contribute a review, please check out my website.
Sai lava Leilani. After the break, we're joined by Wellington author and educator Dahlia Malaeulu. Welcome back to Talanoa with Tupe. Today we are joined by Wellington author and educator Dalia Malayulu. Talofa Dalia, welcome to the show.
Talofa lava, Tupe, thank you so much for having me.
It's wonderful. We've turned out slightly coordinated.
Great minds,
Exactly.
obviously.
But tell me about your dress.
So I literally made it this week. I've just always been a person who likes to be creative in everything I do. So if there's something I can't find, I usually just make it. So yeah.
That's one of the things I actually find really inspiring about your story is that you do things yourself. And I want to get into that a bit later, but first let's start at the beginning. So your parents moved to Wellington from Samoa. Can you tell us a bit about your background?
Yeah, sure. So Dad was from the village of Sinamonga in Samoa. Mum is from Vaivasetai, so both Apia city dwellers, quite close to the capital of Samoa. And they came to New Zealand, like many, to have a better life. Mum came for education, actually went to school in at Poral College. Dad came a little bit later for work. They met, settled in Wainuiomata, where they raised my sister and I, which is quite close here to the Hutt Valley. And then from there, I grew up with amazing and inspiring teachers who then encouraged me and also allowed me to kind of be a teacher myself and follow that journey. And I'm really blessed to be able to do that. And then after teaching for about 13 years, I currently now just teach part-time. I also provide professional development workshops for schools and for educators, as well as author and write books. So yeah, bit of a mix of things.
A lot going on.
Yeah.
And from your teaching background, there's, I guess, a lot of resources that you can draw on to help others in their teach Pasifika kids in particular. One of the things that drew me to you initially was an article that you wrote for I Tangata, and in that you talk about your upbringing, and you said that for a while when you were younger you thought that you were Māori. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think growing up you never really know or learn about culture, especially when you're so young. So it wasn't until I had a few experiences that I realised I'm actually a product of my environment. So growing up in Wainuiomata, I had a lot of friends and a lot of them were Māori. At school we happily sang waiata, we joined the kapahaka group, did karakia, and it wasn't until I got asked a question of what my iwi was that really forced me to kind of think about my own identity and what group I belonged to. So after being asked that question, I went home. As you do, you go and ask your mum. Mum was folding kangamea, folding her washing, and I asked her, Mum, what iwi do we belong to? She kind of giggled, threw it off and just said, oh no, that's just for Māori. So that one moment kind of triggered a bit of a journey for me and into my own cultural identity, knowing who I was. Because I started thinking, well, if they're Māori and they have iwis, then what am I and what do I have? And it was not necessarily something that we were brought up and told directly or taught about. So yeah, so that was the moment that really made me think about who I was. Yeah.
I think that's a really insightful reflection, because I think as parents sometimes we take for granted that, you know, we're strong in our own identity and therefore our children will automatically pick that up. But because we're not being raised in Samoa, we can't take that for granted.
Yeah, absolutely right. And it's taken me my own journey to realise that our parents and that first generation of migrants, that they are a product of their environment, and they didn't necessarily have to have the tools and strategies to have to teach each other because they were in immersive environments. Whereas when they're now in New Zealand, non-immersive environments are a lot is usually what is happening at homes and within schools and workplaces. And that's where you have a lot of the dual identities pop up and the challenges with our identities and who we are and when we can be Samoan and when the value it is and whether it is an asset or not. So yeah, a lot of issues come up for us as tangata Pasifika. Yeah.
And so at 26 you went to Samoa for the first time. How was that?
Yeah, it was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. encountered a spiritual connection, exactly what your families talk about, why they talk about the long return home, all the stories you were told, all of the connection to our whanua. And at the time when I was 26, I remember describing it as almost finding your tūranga waiwai, like where you stand, where you belong. So I was really blessed to have that connection, and is why hubby and I kind of went back and got married in Samoa, and we celebrate our 10-year anniversary this year.
Congratulations.
So, we wish we could be celebrating it in Samoa, but yeah, we'll have to do that another time with lockdown.
And so did you grow up speaking Samoan?
No, I didn't. Like many, we were raised to understand it. We were not expected to speak it. So that alone has been something that I've had to unpack and work towards becoming a more fluent speaker within our ngangana. So yeah.
I think that's something that is a really big issue for a lot of Samoans in New Zealand, a lot of Pasifika who have been raised in New Zealand, and even just having, I guess, the understanding of it is considered to be on the spectrum of bilingualism, but getting to the stage where you can use Samoan and English or your heritage language and English to the same degree, that is actually a totally different thing altogether, which requires education in both of the languages.
Absolutely.
So I think we probably, in terms of my own journey as well, like have to be a bit more understanding and forgiving of myself.
Yeah, absolutely. Like my own journey, not being able to speak it, like many thrown in the deep end, expected to speak it, because like we just said before, our parents have come from these environments where it's immersive. So they didn't need to teach. They weren't taught back home. They were actually, the emphasis was not to speak Samoan in English settings. So English was actually emphasised. For myself, going from not speaking the language, having negative experiences, and having people kind of call you plastic, not being Samoan enough, being afraid, and really denting your kind of confidence in who you are culturally, took a toll really. And I personally ran away from the culture. I was literally scared of the real Samoans who knew the language, who knew the culture, who knew things that I just didn't. And it wasn't until we joined the Samoa Methodist Church, our local Samoa Methodist Church, when I was about 12, 13, that I was actually in a real immersive environment for the first time, and where I was expected to do things, perform things for Samoa each week. So it was practiced, it was rehearsed. I had an amazing team of church sisters who supported me through everything, and who gave me really the stepping stones in education that I needed to develop my own cultural confidence, as well as the understanding of things I just had no idea about. But so it was from there that I literally jumped off really, and I built my confidence up, and then it was up to me to kind of develop the cultural knowledge. I would go to my parents and they would help to fill in gaps, but our parents aren't always great teachers. They mean well, and the intention is there, but just like everyone's not going to be a great teacher, especially if you've never done it before. So I sought out family members who were quite strong and supportive and were natural teachers. I had auntie and uncles I had questions for, and that I had discussions with, who helped me. I had my church sisters. I had friends who were also fluent, who also helped me. So it was that led me to this journey back home, where I had this connection. And then it kind of all accumulated or fast-tracked when I had my own children. So when you have your own children, is another layer or another level. Because now I'm in charge of passing our ngangana and our anganu'u wha Samoa on to our children, because I want them to be proud and know who they are, and not necessarily have to deal with the identity challenges and issues that I did, as every parent does. So it was through becoming a mother really that I put the foot on the gas, and it was time to be integrating it into everyday life. It was me modelling our ngangana for them, and showing how beautiful our culture is, as well as it being an asset and that it can be an asset, especially in a non-immersive environment.
Yeah. I mean, I think you've touched on a number of really important points there, just like how important the environment is, and that you have the right support around you. And then you've got a lot of really amazing insights from your own experience that you can pass on both to your students and to your children. So I just wanted to talk about your teaching for a moment. So you come from a teaching background, and you were you excelled in that area, and then you decided to, go into the creative sphere with your writing. So what was it like making that decision, and how did your family react to that?
I kind of still feel like an educator. I don't feel like I've ever left that sphere, because I found that when I became a writer, or was doing a lot of writing, and it was being noticed and picked up, and the projects that I went for, it really came through a process of inquiry, and inquiry is taught to students in schools all across New Zealand. And for instance, the first books I wrote and we created was the Mila's Mangangana series. So they were a set of 3 books, just to help develop the Ngangana confidence of Te Maiti Whaonga, as well as families who were struggling. And so that came from a need, and it came from a gap. There were no books. I couldn't find anything for my own children. I went to the library and saw the small, sad stack of books that were Pasifika, that were meant to be highly engaging and meant to be promoting our culture, in comparison to the millions of books that were written by Palangi for Palangi. So it didn't make sense to me. So what I did, not being able to find these resources in a book format, was create them. So I started writing them for my own children, including the language, and then did a proposal, sent them off, got picked up by a publisher. So everything I've kind of done after that, with Mila's Mangangana series, online articles that I've written and published, as well as the Teine Samoa book, that's my most recent project, has always been about developing that cultural confidence and that understanding, and most importantly, making sure that we're seen and that we're heard and we're valued as Samoan, as tangata Pasifika. And I think that's what has made my family really, really supportive and really proud of me. Had a beautiful moment with them, my parents, last year, who sat me down and told me how proud they were of me, of the work that I'm doing for our people, as well as the non-Pasifika people, helping them to understand, because it's twofold. It's for our own people to connect with each other and to be supportive and to develop their own confidence and understanding. And then it has to work with those who are non-Pasifika, because they need to see us, and they need to hear us and value us. And by valuing us, we need to be in all the worlds that we live in, not just home, not just church. So they've been my family have been really supportive, and for those reasons, Yeah,
that's really awesome. And I do think that, your book series, Mila's Mangangana series, is so important, because from a very young age, our Pasifika children can see themselves reflected in books that they're reading at school. And, for the other children in class, they can see that it's normal to have Samoan kids in a book.
Absolutely. And there's different, I remember growing up, I didn't see names, I didn't see characters, I didn't see our experiences. I only saw Molly going on picnics. No one was going to kongais. And when we don't see ourselves in these books that we read, I think about our Te Maiti, and I think about the message that they see from that. So where are they and their culture and who they represent, their families, where are they represented? And does that mean that we're valued in that world? That's a message that our children are getting. And this is why you hear so many children, I've had so many students in the past who've said, "Oh, miss, but it doesn't matter, because when we go out into the Palangi world, this is what matters. Not to be that, not to show our kongais, not to teach them how to say our names properly, because we're never featured in anything." So I've had real conversations with students and educators who have these issues over years. I've been teaching for over a decade now, and I know for a fact that these issues have been happening a long time before I came, and that they're still happening now. So for me to produce books that have our kids included, our language included, that support Pasifika as well as non-Pasifika to understand us is really, really important. But this is why I want so many of us to actually jump on board and to produce things like this, because we can do it out for ourselves. And the things that are out there, they should be, whatever is for us, it should be by us. And that's one important lesson that I've definitely learned on this journey.
Nothing about us without us.
That's right, absolutely.
So I want to delve a bit more into your creative journey and lessons that other people can draw, but first we've got to take a break. Welcome back to Talanoa Tupe. We're here with Dahlia Malaeulu. So, Dalia, the article that you wrote about your cultural identity resonated with a lot of people, so much so that you wrote another book, Teine Samoa. So can you tell us about that project which you released during Samoan Language Week?
Yeah, absolutely. So Teine Samoa, as you said, was inspired by an article that I wrote for I Tangata last year. And I just had this urge, really, to actually get the story out of my system. And I kind of thought, from the feedback that I received from the article, that there was more to it. And I created this story. I always call it a space, this writing space. And I literally started writing about 4 junior high school students and their own cultural identity journeys. And then it tied into their own parents. So you can make the links and the connections with why we are the way we are. Then I took another layer and added the education element with our educators and teachers and their journeys and the impact that that has in developing their understanding. So that book was written across a week. It was a bit of a flurry. And with lockdown, you couldn't produce or you couldn't publish anything. But I then discovered the world of e-publishing, and that was encouraged, thankfully, by a lovely friend, Lani Young, who is very much a do-it-yourself kind of person, and she was right, you can do it yourself. So that book is a bit of a labour of love, obviously coming from my own personal experiences and cultural identity, but it was also mixed in with all the Talanoa and conversations I'd had professionally as an educator with students and educators and leaders. So that's how it all came about.
And can you tell us about the Teine Samoa project?
Yes, so after the ebook was published, so that was May this year for Samoan Language Week, in June I started thinking about it, and I started thinking about all the feedback. I also started thinking about the positive feedback that I was receiving. I also started thinking about the Talanoa that I had over years and how useful the story would actually be as a resource, not necessarily just a story to pick up and read and put down. So the Teine Samoa project came about because I wanted it to be a space where real life stories from Teine Samoa could be shared, because I thought, like myself, and being lucky and blessed to have heard these stories in real lifetime, in person, and I thought, imagine if other people could have this experience, and that maybe they could too be moved and motivated like I was to develop the cultural understanding, as well as the confidence needed, really, to help our Te Métis to succeed as who they are. So the project's been amazing. I approached 14 contributing authors. They have 7 students, 7 educators, all ranging from intermediate age student, that is a 13-year-old who is our youngest author, all the way to a university lecturer. I've also got an educator who is in her 50s, and their stories are just amazing because there's some true themes that have been highlighted from it around identity, the dual identity crisis and challenges our children and our adults even have, racism, unconscious bias that our Te Métis as well as educators face, just identity, belonging, stereotypes. And it's just amazing that over the gap, the age gap of an intermediate child to an educated woman who has been a deputy principal over 30 years experience is actually experiencing the same thing. So it kind of points out to what has actually changed for our people within the education system and with us living in New Zealand and the challenges that we face. Yeah.
I just think, I mean, I read your book and, you know, I like devoured it. And I really wish that the book had been around when I was a teenager, because that, for me, took a long time to figure that part of my life out.
Yeah.
And I just think, it's going to help so many people.
And that's exactly why I wrote it. I too the same. I wish I had a book like that. That talked about gōnga'is, that talked about when the whaiwhao came over, that had snippets of our language in it, so that it could be a jumping point for me to know that, oh wow, someone else shares my life and my struggles, and that's what I've received in terms of the feedback from the book, from the original ebook, was almost like, wow, this is my story.
Yes.
Everyone, I've had people who have emailed me their own personal life stories that could literally be a book. The details may be different, but the story really is our story of what happens to a lot of us when we come here. And it's really important for us to also understand that that one idea of what Samoan is very different.
Right?
Yeah. So you can tell through, and I wanted to do that on purpose with the characters.
Yes.
With the 4 junior high school students. We've got our advocacy character. We've got Whaiwhao's daughter, who knows everything and anything inside out. You've got the creative who also wants to, that is the Whaiwhao's daughter, the creative. And you've also got the good girl, the good Teine Samoa, who's doing anything and everything to please and meet expectations. And then finally, the Samoan, the real Samoan from real Samoa character. And it's really interesting that people don't understand that they've actually, everyone has their own cultural baggage that they're dealing with.
Yeah.
And that's all underneath this title of Samoan.
Yeah.
So that's what I wanted to highlight and illustrate, and as well as the parents' stories to reiterate that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I think there's a tendency maybe to paint all Pasifika with the same brush, whereas actually there's a lot of diversity within our group, and even within, you know, Samoans, there's a lot of diversity there as well.
Absolutely.
So I think this book would be a really amazing resource. Especially for those of us who are trying to walk two worlds.
Yes.
And one of the things that you've written about is that in your experience as a teacher, you've encountered a lot of Pasifika parents who perhaps aren't passing the culture on to their children. So why do you think it's important to build culturally strong Pasifika kids?
I think it really comes down to belonging. If you don't have that sense of belonging, I've seen a lot of kids fall through the cracks because they don't know who they are. They really do want to know who they are. They don't know how to get that from either their own families or with the resources or minimal resources that they have. You know, when I was teaching full-time in a classroom, I had kids for 2 years in an intermediate school space, and I could help them for 2 years but not guarantee their passage for the rest of the 5 years of their education. Each family is different. Each one of their priorities is different. Who's available to support is different. So that sense of belonging is really, really key to our kids in everything. There's even research that shows how knowing who you are and being secure in your identity actually promotes and helps your total well-being. Your mental health has been directly connected to your cultural identity and being secure in it. So it's something that's really, really important, and is why I believe it's really key to us in connecting with each other, as well as others being able to connect with us, because then we can share and confidently share who we are and teach others and create that awareness. Yeah, so very, very important.
So you spoke a bit before about how when you became a mother, it took your own cultural journey to a whole nother level.
Yeah.
What advice do you have for parents who want to pass their culture onto their children, but they're not secure in their culture themselves, or even to the Balangi teachers that you work with who have Pasifika kids in their class and they're not familiar with the culture. How can they encourage cultural security?
I think it's really important for everybody to kind of unpick your own cultural baggage first. I think the dream is that we go out there as cultural soldiers and go, great, this is what we're going to do, this is where we're going to be, we're going to put posters on the wall, we're going to talk it every day. But if you're not feeling secure or confident in yourself, and it's due to the many experiences that we have growing up. So until we unpack that and we understand our own perspectives, our own values and beliefs that we bring to the table and why we are the way we are, that we can actually do that to the fullest potential and that we can actually effectively do it, basically. So that'd be the first thing I'd say. The second thing to parents and families within our community as Tangata Pasifika, as Samoan, would be to create this safe talanoa, really. The safe talanoa that's filled with love and respect and mawhanawhana and just humour, the way that we do it. And it's not about filtering out who is Samoan and not Samoan, because that's a huge issue within our community. That plastic Samoan phrase is still being thrown around. People are still being neglected or ignored because they don't know, but man, do they want to know. So having that talanoa and ensuring that they feel safe is really important, and that you are approachable and you are supporting them. As well as the last thing for educators, on top of those things, is creating those safe learning supportive environments, creating learning opportunities that allow our tamati to actually explore who they are and explore with them. So many of our non-Pasifika educators are really low on their own confidence. They don't know what they don't know. And until we kind of welcome them and we learn with our tamati, if that's the case, then it becomes our journey, which is even more powerful. You're not alone, do you know what I mean? Yeah. So it's a real collective responsibility, I believe, and there's so many layers to it, but until we develop that confidence and unpack our own cultural baggage, that we can effectively support our tamati.
So together with your husband, what are the values that you are trying to instill in your two sons?
I think the key ones that I think a lot of us tangata Samoa have been raised or brought up with was wha'alalo, so respect, love, alofa, being a person of service is at the core of what both me and my husband do, so tautua. But I think the most important thing that my mother has actually passed on to me was about, it's actually a phrase that involves a number of values that she repeated to me, and it was tauma whai, whatever you do, you need to try, a'o, learn, you keep repeating it so that it can be committed to your knowledge, your little kete of knowledge, and ongasai, so be focused and disciplined, and ensuring that you're doing in a way that you're succeeding as a proud Samoan, because there's a difference in being Samoan and succeeding, and actually succeeding proudly as who you are and knowing who you are, because I want my children to see amazing tangata Pasifika, tangata Samoa who are proud in displaying who they are and know who they are, so that they can be encouraged and supported on their journey.
Those are words to live by. I have some questions now for you, some quick fire questions.
Awesome.
So first up, what is your go-to karaoke song?
Beyonce. Anything on Beyonce.
Awesome. You got a whole catalogue there to choose from. And who was the most influential Pasifika person you knew of growing up?
Oh, good one. Growing up, I think the most, one word. Probably Nuanua.
Oh, awesome.
I know it's who we meant to know, but
no, that's cool. Legend, yeah.
Yeah, but hearing about her story, and Woman of the Mau, like really made me go, what? We've got a history I had no idea that we had and never been talked about, and yeah, so it really opened my eyes to the strength of women in our culture, and being the backbone. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. If you weren't in your current profession, what would you be doing now?
I think I would be some sort of creative because I like to make things. I like to make things. I'd like to just create things out of nothing. So yeah, I think I would be a creative regardless.
If you could invite any 3 people in history to dinner, who would they be?
Oh my gosh. Okay. Michelle Obama, Brene Brown. I love Brene Brown. And I would also have a combo of my grandmother and my mother.
Nice. Oh, it's a family dinner.
Yeah,
They're both
yeah,
there.
yeah.
Okay.
They help with the questioning.
Yeah. Okay, and last question. How do you want to be remembered?
I want to be remembered through my work, just being a person of service for our community, and doing anything that I can within my powers to support our te Māti and our people and being proud in who they are. Yeah.
Awesome. So you want to be remembered for empowering others?
Yes, absolutely. And just knowing that, promoting the idea that our culture and our ngangana, it's an asset and it is valued and it should be valued in our world. Same with us. Yeah.
Awesome. Dalia, thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm sure that your talk today really helped a lot of other people to understand the journey they're going through on their own, their journey to find their cultural identity.
Awesome. Whawhai lava tupe. Thanks for having
Thank
me.
you. In our next segment, we talk about one of the most important jobs one can do, which is, of course, parenting. Let's hear from the Martin Hautus Foundation Trust, which has been running parenting courses for the last 10 years.
My name is Maretta Solomon.
And I'm Maretta Solomon-Mua. And so for the last 10 years, we've been delivering a parenting program that focuses on a different idea each week to help our parents build more positive communication and bond with their children, because parenting is the most important job that one will ever do. However, our precious gifts do not come with a manual. So that's our aim each week, to build more positive communication and bond. For this week is to give positive praise. Make sure your praise is kept positive. Don't mix it up with an opportunity to give more instructions. For example, you did a good job in cleaning your room. Why can't you do that all the time? How do you think your child feels when you say a statement like that? They might feel confused and ask themselves whether they did a good job or not. So keep it positive. You can say, you did a good job of cleaning your room, and full stop. Continue to give pats and kisses and encouraging words along with your praise.
Thank you for joining us. If you would like to know more about Martin Hautus Foundation Trust,
you can like our Facebook page and see the details on the screen.
Thank you for that tip. What we say to our children becomes their internal voice, so communication is key. Let's hear the answers to the Blue Pacific quiz.
Welcome back to the PSJL quiz.
Let's compare our answers.
This flag belongs to New Caledonia.
The capital of New Caledonia is Noumea.
The currency of New Caledonia is the CFP franc.
The leader of New Caledonia is Thierry Santa.
Thank you for joining us and hope you did well.
If you want to join the Pacific Social Justice League, follow us on our social media platforms. Mother!
Thanks everyone for joining us today. Now to end our show, we have Soul Brown and the Soul Sisters. Whawhai te le lava mo le tātou polo kalame le nei aso, soifua ma ia manuia. See you next time on Talanoa Tupe.
New beginnings, new land, new language, new home. It was far from easy, but they did it for me. They left their paradise just to give me a better life. Now everything I do it for you. close my eyes and I can only see the stars that led me up to here, and I can hear their cries for their homelands they left behind for me. So I will never forget the pain they endured just for me. So I stand for a nation of love. Every trial, every doubtful step will amount to nothing. In my heart you were there. I close my eyes and I can only see the stars that led me up to here, and I can hear their cries for their homelands they left behind for me. So I will never forget the pain they endured just for me. So I stand for a nation